Yo, this video I'm going to go over how I made this disgusting gnarly hand in Blender. This arose from three main steps: the sculpting stage, where I kind of modeled the hand shape and gave it some nice details, onto the texturing stage where I added, the wetness and the subsurface scattering, and then onto the rendering and lighting where it all comes together. But hey, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. First, let's talk about cheese. Let me postulate to you, dear viewer, a scenario. Imagine you and your boys are hungry. You order a pizza. Lovely. It arrives, you take it out the box. Smells incredible, looks amazing. You cut it up so everyone can have a slice. You reach for yours first. But as you pull the slice from the rest of the pizza and towards your mouth, something strange happens. The once delectable dough and melted cheese starts to take a grimmer appearance, starting to almost look organic, almost like flesh and sinew being torn, like skin being ripped. And then suddenly, you just don't feel so hungry anymore. Now, apart from perhaps ruining your appetite for the foreseeable future, the striking observation that these otherwise harmless, gooey food products can have such a striking similarity to human flesh, I think is quite interesting. So, hear me out. Well, one of the most important steps in authentically recreating something realistically in the world is obviously finding reference, and unless you want to be put on a MI5 watch list, I'll probably caution against searching for, rotting corpse into your search bar. And of course you could probably get away with searching for like some medical cadavers or some weird surgery footage, but thinking of cheese as flesh in this way can also be taken, much more literally. In 1982, a movie simply named The Thing was released, and as it was made before the prevalence or even invention of CGI, practical effects were used to sell these horrid depictions of mangled flesh and weird, disgusting creatures. And to make these effects look believable, they needed to get quite creative, utilizing various waxes, bubblegum, and even more culinary materials like food coloring, eggs, and, of course, cheese. Now, just to really drive this point home, I'm going to play a little game. You're going to see 5 images on your screen, and you're going to have to decipher whether this is an innocent food product or, something more sinister. Yes, I've actually tampered with the colours of these images slightly, but, you should be able to decipher which is cheese and which is, not. So, let's begin. Alright, yeah, you may have guessed, these are all actually pictures of pizza. And yes, none of these are depictions of any weird aliens or desecrated body parts, unfortunately. But a few of them did actually look pretty convincing. And that's the whole point of this exercise, to try and envision something mundane and something that you're very familiar with something audacious and unfamiliar and out there. Like, I'm pretty sure most of you aren't going out into the night and getting too familiar with, I don't know, the roadkill on the side of the street or the inhabitants of the local cemetery. Right? Alright, now we got the theory out the way. Let's see if we can't go into our software of choice and start seeing how we can make something of our own. Now, as you might have noticed, I'm not starting completely from scratch. I've got a kind of base model here, and I'm kind of fleshing out the arm so I can properly apply this cheese theory that we've been talking about. I've provided a source file in the description below where you can get a low-res version of this model, and so you guys can subdivide it and sculpt along with me if you so desire. Obviously you can see I'm working on the hand and arm, but as you might have been able to detect, cheese theory is actually quite a versatile thought process, and you can apply it to all manner of shape and body parts. Like later in this video, well, I'll show you how I've applied this to the face of this weird creature, to the chest area, and just mainly highlighting the grotesque accuracy you can get when utilizing this technique. But up until this point, we haven't really gotten into the main details where we can most effectively unleash the full potential of this thoery devisation, where we can really start to make this mesh look more gross and gory. These are some of the references I'm using for now. As you can see, these are in fact medical cadavers, and it's only really later on where we can start using a more cheesy reference. And you can see I'm just putting in the bony landmarks and kind of hinting at the soft tissue. Hey, still watching, are you? Why don't you go ahead and give us a cheeky like and subscribe.
That was diabolical!
Like, only now we can see the more of the details are being integrated, and we can utilize what we've learnt about stretching dairy products. Now we can start to see the hand actually start to take shape. We've got some fingernails in there, and we've got some stringy cheese sinews, and it's starting to look quite gruesome. A thing to keep in mind is that these more fleshy, stringy, soft sinews are affected by gravity, so when you're sculpting your hand or whatever, you need to keep in mind how gravity might pull some of these gooey bits down, or might de-shape and bend these fleshy strings. Alright, so a quick demonstration. This is some fleshy, cheesy thing I've made in a few minutes, and we can see the cheesy flesh tendrils going across these two masses, and we're going to be seeing how gravity affects them. So obviously, if gravity is acting downwards, then we can see all we need to do is just pull them down a bit. And now we can see they're kind of sagging in a way that will looks like if gravity was acting on them. And of course, if the strings are pulled tightly, so imagine if we pulled this mass further away, then the tendrils would be more stretched, more taut. Therefore, if they were previously sagging, if you pull them away, then they will shoot back into this taut state. Imagine a guitar string or any type of string. If you pull the two ends closer together, they'll kind of sag and maybe coil. But if you pull them apart, like on a guitar, then they'll be straight, taut, and they won't sag. So that's something you need to keep in mind when you're sculpting these organic structures. As you might have noticed, around this stage in the sculpting process, I was having some difficulty with the resolution count. Especially around the knuckle areas. I didn't have enough polygons to accommodate for the detail I was trying to put in. And that's one thing about Blender that you probably should keep in mind. Blender's not the worst program or 3D software for housing a lot of detail on your models, a lot of polygons, but it's not the best either. Program like ZBrush, which is dedicated solely to sculpting, you could feasibly get to the hundreds of millions of polygons in one scene with a pretty standard to good device. But with the same computer or device, when using Blender, you could maybe only get to like around 20 million maybe, and that's one limitation Blender has when using it for sculpting. So if your device can't get to that higher poly count, I would say, use your available geometry to the best of your ability and try to squeeze out every bit of detail you can. Also, you can, hide certain areas that you're not working on while you're working on other parts to kind of save memory. Or you could go in the texturing phase and add some tileable details to the normal or bump maps, so you can kind of give the illusion of higher geometry detail. Those are a few solutions that will maybe help you squeeze out as much detail as physically possible. Especially for more organic creatures and people and anything with meat and bones, a high polygon count is quite important, rather than say, some hard surface stuff like robots and guns. They usually have flat, long surfaces that can be easily replicated with, single polygons. But with these more uneven, jagged and stretchy surfaces like skin and flesh, they often need a lot more geometry to describe their shape. Also, especially when applying cheese theory, usually a lot of resolution is needed. Cheese theory for me has been a very useful idea in my sculpting escapades, especially with this more gruesome stuff, but as you can probably imagine, it's not a flawless strategy and it can't really simulate all parts of human tissue. You've probably never seen a wrinkly pizza or spotty hairy cheese. For these more intricate skin details, you're going to need to pull up some reference of actual people with skin, or use some skin alphas that you can project onto your high polygon sculpt. Here's a link at the top right if you want to learn how to do that. So there's one of many limitations that you could say cheese theory unfortunately possesses, but for what it's good at, I think it's quite useful and shouldn't be underestimated. Right, before we wrap up here, let's take a quick gander around at the full model of this weird creature. Here on the face we can see I've displayed here all the techniques that we've learnt, some stretching veins and loose skin kind of wrapping around the bone and muscle underneath. If we turn on to the other side now, we can see similar story, just lines and lines and layers of disgustingness. Love it, love it. If we just look at it from more of a front view, we can see not symmetrical at all, well, very superficially. I wanted it to look more organic, so we didn't have much of that symmetry going on. If we move to the other arm now, we can see classic cheese theory here. You can see between these two muscles, the bicep and the tricep, I believe, we can see they're just, loosely, really loosely held together by this decaying skin, and you can see it looks almost identical to, the freshly baked pizza. Then onto the chest, same story. If you've ever seen a mummified, mummy, if you look up pictures of ancient pharaohs, you can see when they dry up and shrivel up, the skin starts to take on this appearance. And this is what it looks like in the viewport render. If I was to press render, and then we can go down to the ribs here, see exactly the same story. And you can get away with doing this on, the whole body of whatever creature you're doing, because, cheese theory is just that versatile. And just quickly, if you are wanting to see the whole thing textured and rendered, this whole creature, as of recording this, it's not actually finished yet, so might have to wait a bit, but I'll maybe post a YouTube video on how I did the whole thing, the whole creature, or I'll just upload something to my new ArtStation, and you could check there in however many weeks it takes me to complete this whole thing. Now we're on to one of the more latter stages, getting some colour in there in the texturing phase, and around here we need to kind of say goodbye to our cheesy friend, the cheese theory. We need to start getting more realistic, because I don't know about you, but I've never seen red wet cheese before. So around the colouring stage is where the reaches of cheese theory start to decline. So concerning reference for texturing, you might need to go a bit more old school, pull up some surgery footage, pull up even some roadkill if you so desire. But for this, I just wung it. I just put red where I thought red should be, and skin colour where skin colour should be, and called it a day. But if you wanted to get really realistic, you could do as I said and search for something a bit grimmer. Alright, so these are the renders. Hope you enjoyed the video. Peace.